The summer sun cast long shadows across our small suburban enclave, a neat grid of painted front doors, manicured lawns, and mailboxes standing like silent sentinels. Life here was a well-rehearsed symphony of early morning lawnmowers, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional shriek of children at play. It was the kind of neighborhood where the air always smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and ambitious weekend projects. But beneath its picture-perfect surface, the community hid currents of quiet discontent and unspoken rivalries. Karen lived 3 houses down from me, her home an immaculate fortress of beige siding and gleaming windows. She ruled the HOA with a velvet glove and an iron will, her influence creeping like ivy through board meetings and neighborhood gatherings. Her latest crusade? Banning bicycles from our community streets. Too dangerous, she claimed. An eyesore. A nuisance. It started with the flyers. Bright yellow slips tucked under windshield wipers, taped to mailboxes, and slipped through door cracks. Protect our neighborhood. Say no to bikes. They screamed in Karen's looping script, words as sharp and precise as her manicure. I found one on my doorstep, one sun-drenched morning. Its edges curled slightly from the dew. I could see the future she envisioned. A sterile paradise where nothing ever moved too fast, and everyone fell quietly in line. Her vision clashed with the world I imagined, where the clatter of bicycle chains harmonized with laughter and the rush of the wind. I saw children pedaling towards new adventures, parents riding alongside them, the freedom of 2 wheels, a gentle rebellion against stasis. Her campaign gained traction quickly, a tide of support rising alongside her resolve. At the next HOA meeting, there was a murmur of agreement when she stood, her voice tinged with authority and a hint of self-righteousness. Her arguments were a patchwork quilt of safety statistics and aesthetic concerns, stitched together in a narrative that left little room for dissent. Yet, amid her rising sea of compliance, my thoughts drifted to quieter waters. I refused to drown in her manufactured outrage. Instead, I found solace in action, my mind a forge where new ideas took shape, glowing with quiet determination. I envisioned a haven for bicycles, a place where they wouldn't just be tolerated but celebrated, a bike library, a repository of freedom and community spirit. The HOA hall would be my canvas, its wide, empty expanse a blank slate yearning for reinvention. The irony was delicious, and I savored it with a smile as I ran fingers over the smooth surface of the flyers, now repurposed as bookmarks for my plans. As Karen plotted her next move, I focused on mine, each step a silent ripple in the pond of our neighborhood. My heart was a steady metronome, keeping pace with the rhythm of change I intended to orchestrate. The library would flourish in the heart of the place she fought so hard to control, a testament to the resilience of an idea whose time had come. In the quiet moments of the night, as streetlights bathed our neighborhood in a soft glow, I felt a kind of peace settle over me. I had no need for noisy declarations or public battles. My resolve was like the sturdy frame of a bicycle, built to withstand the bumps and curves of the road ahead. And so, beneath the calm surface of our suburban life, the wheels began to turn. Karen's crusade against the humble bicycle had gained momentum, as if fueled by an invisible windstorm. It started with a deluge of absurd rules that seemed to sprung from a place of deep-seated indignation rather than logic. Her list, posted in the common areas, had been typed with the precision of someone wielding a scalpel, each letter a testament to her resolve. No bikes on sidewalks, no bikes on driveways, no bikes in sight. I stood before the bulletin board, the paper practically shouting its demands, and felt a simmering resolve settle in my chest. A quiet rebellion, like a stream carving its path through a stubborn landscape. Karen wasn't content with mere rules. Citations appeared, slipped under windshields with the stealth of a thief in the night. My mailbox was not spared. It was as if the very ink on these citations sneered at me, a tangible extension of her disdain. Her name, always signed with a flourish that turned my stomach with its self-importance, was a constant reminder of her presence in every corner of this neighborhood. The gossip spread like wildfire, consuming rational thought and replacing it with whispered speculations. At the morning mailboxes during evening strolls, Karen's disapproval was the currency of conversation. The bike library had become a beacon of resistance, and by extension, a lightning rod for her fury. Yet there was a certain irony in it all. In her attempt to control, Karen had inadvertently fostered a community of quiet rebels. The library had become more than a collection of bikes. It was a gathering place for the curious, the defiant, the tired souls seeking solace in the simple joy of a two-wheeled escape. I found myself lingering there more often, aligning bikes with a precision that bordered on meditative. Each frame had its own story, its own purpose. Children, who once darted from corner to corner, sought out the library, their faces lighting up with a kind of reverence usually reserved for the forbidden. This was our sanctuary, our unspoken challenge to the status quo. At dusk, when the world softened and shadows stretched long, I would watch from my window. Bikes traced arcs under the streetlights, their presence a gentle defiance against Karen's crusade. The air was thick with potential, an unspoken solidarity binding us together. Karen, however, was not one to be outdone. Her presence remained spectral and omnipresent, her eyes watching from behind closed blinds, calculating her next move. I could sense her dissatisfaction, a living thing that pulsed in the air and threatened to suffocate the joy we had sown into the fabric of our lives. When she did emerge, it was with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement like a metronome set to a frantic pace. Her voice, when it came, was sharp and cutting, like the blade of a guillotine poised to drop. She spoke of order and safety, her words meant to disarm and dismantle. But there was power in our silence, in the quiet unity of those who saw bikes not as an enemy, but as a symbol of freedom. In that stillness, Karen was met not with the fear she expected, but with a calm resolve that was harder to break than she could have ever anticipated. This was more than just a battle over bikes. It was a testament to resilience, a reminder that even in the face of absurdity, there are some things that remain untamed. And so, we stood silently, our conviction as unyielding as the wheels that spun beneath us. The sun hung low, casting elongated shadows across the neighborhood, a gentle reminder of time's relentless march. I sat by my window, the soft hum of life outside blending with the rhythmic ticking of the clock. Karen had unwittingly set the stage for a quiet rebellion, her resolve as brittle as the autumn leaves that whispered their way across the pavement. I had been meticulous in my preparations. Each early morning and late evening I documented every ripple of dissatisfaction her bicycle ban caused. I watched as families adjusted, some reluctantly strapping unwieldy scooters to car racks, others walking with an unfamiliar slowness, their bicycles gathering dust in garages. Every nod of discontent and every shared glance of disbelief was noted. My journal became a tapestry of communal unrest, each entry weaving a narrative that spoke volumes beyond mere words. The Homeowners Association Hall, once a place of mundane meetings and obligatory gatherings, was now the heart of my quiet revolution. The bike library was born not out of defiance, but a simple need to restore balance. It was a modest plan, elegant in its simplicity. A collection of bicycles, thoughtfully refurbished, parked neatly along the walls of the hall. Each one was a testament to shared stories, a vessel for the joy and freedom that Karen's decree had attempted to stifle. I had enlisted the help of a few allies, their enthusiasm infectious. Even the smallest gestures carried monumental weight. A donation here, a repair there. It was enough to keep the momentum building, a slow but steady tide rising against Karen's brittle dam. As I prepared to open the library, I welcomed the irony that Karen herself had paved the way. Her insistence on holding meetings in the HOA hall provided the perfect cover. Her blindness to the nuances of her surroundings was almost tragic, like a queen oblivious to the revolution brewing in her own court. And so, on that crisp Saturday morning, I opened the doors of the hall. The air inside was tinged with anticipation, the bicycles gleaming under the artificial lights, inviting whispers of possibility. The first visitors trickled in, their curiosity soon giving way to delight. Families reunited with their old friends, the bicycles they had once cherished. Laughter echoed off the walls, a sweet symphony of collective triumph. I watched from a corner, content in my anonymity. This was never about recognition, but rather a gentle reminder of what community could achieve when united by a shared purpose. The bike library was a quiet rebellion, its impact subtle yet profound. Karen arrived, her presence a thundercloud on the horizon. Her eyes widened, the realization dawning with a clarity that couldn't be ignored. She stood there, rooted in place, as the bicycles moved around her like a river parting around an immovable stone. I offered no explanation, no words of defiance. The scene spoke for itself, a silent testament to the power of quiet resistance. Her edict had been challenged, not with loud protest or flamboyant gestures, but with something far more enduring: the joy of a community reclaiming its freedom, one bicycle at a time. In that moment, I understood the true nature of power. It wasn't found in decrees or rules, nor in the loud proclamations of authority. It thrived in the quiet acts of resilience, in the subtle ways we chose to push back against injustice. It was a lesson Karen had yet to learn, and one we would continue to teach, silently, persistently, as the wheels of change turned ever onwards. The day after the vote, an eerie calm settled over the neighborhood, the kind of quiet that precedes a storm. Karen didn't know it yet, but I was already setting the gears in motion. Her crusade to banish bicycles had indeed won her the battle, but there was a war yet to be waged. I had something up my sleeve, something that required patience and the precision of a chess master. The plan was simple, though simplicity often hides complexity. The HOA Hall, a drab building with the architectural charm of a 1970s bunker, was our target. The irony of it thrilled me. Once a meeting place for mundane debates over lawn heights and mailbox colors, it would become the hub of a rebellion disguised as community service. I started with the bylaws, dry, intricate scriptures of suburbia, every quirk and loophole memorized. It was my canvas, and oh, what a picture I intended to paint. Buried within the dense text was a clause about the use of the HOA Hall for nonprofit activities benefiting the community. The beauty of it all danced in my mind like fireflies on a summer night. In the following days, I quietly engaged the services of a local attorney who specialized in nonprofit law. She was sharp, with an eagle's gaze and a mind that moved like a viper. Together, we drafted the documents to establish the bike library. It was designed to promote health, mobility, and a sense of freedom. What could Karen possibly find objectionable? I relished the prospect of her reaction. When the paperwork was complete, I submitted it to the HOA board. They were legally obligated to entertain any nonprofit initiative under their roof, especially one that adhered so closely to their own guidelines. Karen's influence was strong, but bureaucracy has a way of dulling even the sharpest claws. I spent the next few days preparing. Flyers were printed, colorful and enticing, promising the joy of biking to those who couldn't afford their own. The children would love it, a silent army of little rebels on two wheels. We were creating a library where one could check out a bike, just like a book. A journey in handlebars and pedals, waiting for each rider. On the day of the proposal's review, anticipation thrummed through me like a live wire. The board gathered in that soulless room, the walls a muted beige that seemed to absorb any sense of vitality. I stood before them, a single person against a table of skeptics. My heart beat a defiant rhythm as I presented the plan, crafted with precision and care. Each word was a polished stone, laid carefully to pave a path they could not ignore. Karen was there, of course. Her eyes, narrowed and fixed on me, conveyed a fury that seemed almost theatrical. She leaned forward, a panther ready to pounce, but she was bound by the rules she had so fervently supported. The irony was delicious, almost palpable. When the presentation ended, I stood quietly, facing the gathered board. The silence was thick, the kind that weighs down the air and makes each breath feel heavier. Then, a single voice broke through. Approved. The words sliced through the stillness, a knife cutting through a taut string. My victory was quiet, unlike the chaos Karen had stirred. A small nod from the board president, and it was done. The bike library was born. It was a triumph clothed in humility, and as I walked out of the dreary hall, I could sense the shift. A subtle yet profound change had begun to ripple through the neighborhood. Karen would fight, no doubt. She would rally her forces and voice her objections. But in that moment, as I stepped into the fresh air, victory curled around me like a warm breeze. Change had already mounted its bike, ready to ride through the streets, unstoppable and free. The sun rose with a muted glow that softened the edges of the day, a gentle contrast to the storm brewing inside the HOA hall. The community had gathered, drawn by whispers of change and the promise of something new. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that settles in crowds when the usual order is about to be reshuffled. As I stood at the back of the hall, I let my gaze wander over the faces. Familiar ones, framed by years of small talk and shared neighborhood watch meetings. Once they had seemed distant, like actors in someone else's play. But now, each was a co-conspirator in a quiet revolution. The room buzzed with a low murmur, like bees in a hive preparing for flight. Karen sat in the front row, a statue carved from granite, her eyes flint and steel. She was a relic of a time before this movement, when her word was law, and her glare could wilt the most stubborn dissent. Today, she was just another voice in the crowd, an echo slowly fading. The podium called me with a soft urgency. I walked slowly, savoring the moment, the anticipation of the reveal, not just of the BikeLibrary, but of the spirit it represented, a stand against the pettiness that had bound us, against the relentless, grinding control. The hall had been transformed. Bicycles lined the walls, gleaming like sentinels of freedom, each one a promise of possibilities, of journeys unwritten. Old and young had contributed, donating wheels that had once carried them on adventures now relegated to memory. The community had rallied, crafting a sanctuary of spokes and handlebars where once there had been nothing but regulations and prohibitions. This was our answer to Karen's campaign. Not a shout, but a whisper, a subtle shift. For a moment I paused, absorbing the energy of the room. It swirled around me, a tapestry of hope and rebellion. Then, with a breath, I stepped forward, letting my presence speak before I did. The room quieted, a collective exhale as they waited. "Our library is open," I finally said, words settling over the crowd like feathers. A simple announcement, yet loaded with significance. The bikes stood silently, ready to be borrowed, shared, enjoyed, the antithesis of everything Karen had fought for. Her reaction was seismic, though outwardly restrained. The tightening of lips, the narrowing of eyes, a tectonic shift beneath a placid surface. She remained seated, though her knuckles whitened against her chair. Silent fury, impotent in the face of collective will. The meeting continued, a procession of neighbors eager to sign up, to take a bicycle, and with it, a piece of reclaimed autonomy. One by one, they stepped forward, exchanging grins and nods as their names were added to the ledger. Karen watched, isolated in a sea of connection. Her power had not been taken. It simply no longer mattered. She was an artifact of a time before this, a relic left behind by progress. And, as I watched her, I felt a pang of something that wasn't quite pity nor satisfaction. It was the complex emotion reserved for those who choose to stand outside the circle, even when invited in. The sun had climbed higher, casting beams through the windows, illuminating the hall in warmth. The community had found its rhythm, a new beat marching forward without the need for a conductor. I turned, leaving the podium for another, my role in this act complete. Outside, the world awaited, vibrant and full of promise. The bikes stood ready, symbols of our newfound freedom. As I walked out into the sunlight, I thought of journeys yet to come, paths untaken. We were a neighborhood redefined, unshackled. And as I looked back, I knew that the wheels of change would keep turning, long after the curtain had fallen on Karen's reign.